Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and I'm here with another reading vlog. This time I'm going to be reading some of my physical TBR. One of my goals this year was to read more books on my physical TBR than I bought. But overall, I've been doing a pretty good job of not buying tons of new books, but I haven't been doing a great job at reading the books that I have because I got into Libby, and so I've been reading a lot of books on Libby and listening to audiobooks and doing things digitally this year. And so I feel like I haven't actually made that much of a dent in my physical TBR. And then my husband has also bought books, and so overall, I have about 100 books on my physical TBR right now, so I really need to get through some of that before the end of the year. So I thought I'd just do a reading vlog where I just read some books off of my physical TBR, and maybe we'll do a few of these in between now and the end of the year. If you're interested in that, let me know, and maybe we'll do some videos like that. If you have any fun ideas of how to pick books off of my physical TBR that would be fun for videos, let me know. But I've picked 3 books for today's video that are on my physical TBR. These are ones that I've been really wanting to get to. One of them is a new release, and then the other 2 are just ones that I've had on my shelves for a little bit that I've been meaning to get to, and so I'm finally doing it now. The first book that I want to read for this video is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. This is the same author as The 7.5 Deaths of Evil in Hardcastle. And this is my last novel in his backlist to read. Once I've read this, all I have left is his short story in like a collection that a bunch of authors did of like spooky wintry stories. So I might read that this winter, but then I'll be completely caught up on Stuart Turton's backlist, which is fun but also kind of sad because I love his book so much. This book is basically about this, I guess there's this like killer fog that has swept the planet, and everybody has died except for some people living on this one tiny little island. And they have some researchers who are basically keeping the fog at bay. And then one of them gets murdered and the fog starts to creep in, and so they're kind of on this timeline to solve this murder before they all die from the killer fog, which just sounds like such a crazy book, but I'm very excited. He kind of mixes mystery thriller books with fantasy, and it just ends up being such a good combination of things, so I'm very excited about this one. I've been putting this on my TBR for the last few months and just keep not getting to it, so I'm making it happen. This is gonna be the first one that I read in this video, and I'm very excited about it. And then the next book I'm going to read is actually a new release, and that is T. Kingfisher's latest book, Hemlock and Silver. This one is a retelling of Snow White, and I think it's supposed to be a dark retelling, which is my favorite type of book that T. Kingfisher writes. I've read several of her books now, and I really enjoy all of them, but my favorite ones so far have been her fairy tale retellings, and I recently, or at the beginning of the year, I read A Sorceress Comes to Call, which has been one of my favorite books of the year, so I'm very excited for this. I have very high hopes. I don't know how I feel about the lime green sprayed edges. It's fine, but I don't know. I don't know why we're making everything sprayed edges at this point, but I'm very excited for this. I love a good dark book. I feel like this is a good transition into my fall reading with kind of a spooky fairy tale. And then the last one, we've got lots of sprayed edges going on in this video. The last one is Study in Drowning. This A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This one is on my fall TBR. So this will be my first book into my fall TBR now that we're into September. This one is kind of I think it's more like light academia. I don't know if it's quite dark academia, but I don't really know the premise of this. You're basically following these 2 people who are kind of academic rivals who end up on basically taking two jobs on an author's estate after he dies. And as they are there doing whatever they got hired to do, they're finding out that maybe these fantasy books that this author used to write aren't so fictional, and there's some like interesting threats. I also believe that the second book in this series just recently came out, which I didn't even know was supposed to be a series originally, but I think it is, so I'm very interested in this one. I've heard mixed reviews, so I'm curious to see what I think. This book is just so pretty though. I love the gold foiling on the front cover. I think it's so pretty. But I'm very interested to see what I think in this one because I have heard mixed reviews, so this will be the 3rd book that I read in this video. So I'm super pumped about this TBR. I feel like these are going to be some 3 really good books, and I will be checking 3 more books off of my physical TBR. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into Last Murder at the End of the World, and I'll let you know when I have some thoughts. Alright, I have finished The Last Murder at the End of the World. I didn't update at all while I was reading this because honestly, I feel like it's tricky to update on mystery books in the middle of them. Like there's just not that many thoughts. But overall, I really, really love this book. I think I'm giving it 5 stars. It's maybe more like a 4.75, but we're just gonna go with 5. I don't really have any complaints about the book, so might as well just give it 5 stars. But this is more of a sci-fi. I know I mentioned at the beginning that he does like fantasy thrillers. This one's a sci-fi thriller. Very dystopian, as you can kind of get from the premise. I was kind of waiting to see if it was going to turn into a bit of a fantasy because his other books are both fantasy thrillers, but it does not. It stays sci-fi dystopia. But it was really good. This is one of those types of mysteries where you're getting lots of little pieces and you can tell that they're going to end up being important later on, but you can't quite figure out how they connect until it gets to the end, which I don't mind. I do feel like some people can find these kinds of books slow when you're just getting little itty bitty things you can't quite tell what the significance of them is, but you just have to like trust the author. I don't know if I would have liked this book as much if it was the first book that I read by this author, but because I read his other books, I know that he's gonna have a good twist and I know there's gonna be a good payoff, and so it made it easier to get through those parts. So I wouldn't recommend this being your first Stuart Turton book, because I can see how that would come off as slow if you didn't already have that, like, you know where it's gonna go with the author kind of a vibe. Overall, really, really good. I like the twist at the end. There were definitely some things that I did not expect coming out of that. That being said, I don't know if this is like the biggest reveal. It's definitely, again, one of those where you just get all these little pieces and then all of a sudden they all connect together, rather than it being like a big plot twist reveal type of thing at the end. But yeah, it was good. The characters are fun. There's a lot of interesting character dynamics going on, especially as you get into some of the plot twists reveal things further on into it. You learn some interesting things that definitely affect character relationships. It has an element where everyone's memory has been wiped, and so you can't tell if it's an unreliable narrator or not, because and you just can't tell if what people are saying is true because everyone's memories have been wiped from for a, I don't know, maybe like 6-hour time frame around the murder, and so nobody knows if they did it or not, and so that adds a very interesting element into it that they're not sure, like everybody's to a certain extent thinking they might be the murderer. And so then it causes some very interesting situations as people go about trying to cover it up because they think it could be them, but nobody's really sure. Like even the murderer doesn't know if it's them or not. So overall, really, really good book. With that being said, I have started Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. I'm not very far in. I literally just started this morning before work, so I'm like 22 pages into the book. This has quite the opening line, and I feel like it just gives you kind of the tone of the whole book. So I'm just going to read you the first line of the book, but it says, "I had just taken poison when the king arrived to inform me that he had murdered his wife." And that's like your opening scene. She's literally just snorted like snake venom, and then the king shows up unannounced and is like, "Yeah, you may have heard the rumors. They're true. I did murder my wife." And she's like, "What? Why are you here?" Anyways, it comes around to that he's trying to ask her to come and help save his daughter, who he suspects is being poisoned. And it just kind of goes from there. I really only read the first scene or two, but it definitely feels like it's going to be one of the more humorous ones. I love T. Kingfisher's humor. It does say on the back that this is a dark reimagining, so I'm interested to see how much the humor is maintained throughout the story, because Sorceress Comes to Call was definitely on the darker side. I feel like it didn't have as much of the humor. Like there's a few little funny quips here and there, but it wasn't really like a humorous book. This one so far is seeming like it's going to be pretty funny, but I'm interested to see if that kind of tones down as we get into darker elements of it, but we'll see. One thing that I just love so much about T. Kingfisher's writing is her characters, and I can already tell this is going to be a character that I really like. She's very awkward, very antisocial, and now she's gotten roped into this whole thing. She's very much so thrown herself into her studies, and that is all she thinks about is her studies of poisons and their antidotes. And we've already gotten a little bit of the backstory of why she's so into poisons, which I won't say because feel like that's a spoiler even though that's like chapter 2, but I feel like it just adds this extra element of, okay, this makes perfect sense why she's so obsessed with it, and I'm interested to see if that comes into play. But I'm gonna go keep reading this one. I'm very excited for it. It's already shaping up to be a very enjoyable read, I can tell. So I'm gonna go read this one. I don't know if I will update you too much in the middle of it. We'll just see, but I'm very excited for it. So let's go get reading. I have finished Hemlock and Silver, and this was so good. This one is another 5-star, which is just wild. Like 2 5 stars in this video. I guess that's what I get when I just read books that I'm in the mood for. But this is probably very high on my list of favorite T. Kingfishers. I don't know if it quite outdoes Sorceress Comes to Call. Probably depends on my mood. And Thornhedge is the other one. Those are my top 3 that I love. Her retellings specifically are just so good. Where do we even start with this? I guess the biggest thing, this one's definitely pitched as like a dark retelling. And when it comes to dark, like the darkness of this book, it definitely wasn't to the level of Sorceress Comes to Call. I was expecting it to be a little bit more like that one, but this one has a bit more levity, I guess. There's definitely dark things happening, but it's like written in a way that it's dark if you really think about it, but it's kind of easy to just brush over it because it's written kind of in a more lighthearted, funny way. This is definitely the type of humor that I think T. Kingfisher does best. Just kind of this dry, situational humor that I think is just done so well. There is a little bit of a slow burn romance that I thought was done very well in this book. There is like a miscommunication trope, but I feel like they handle it like adults. And so I know a lot of people are really turned off when they hear that there's like miscommunication going on, but I feel like they are both very like, nope, we are adults, we are professionals, we can set aside any personal feelings and we're going to get our job done still, which was very good. I thought the story arc of Snow in this book was very interesting. Overall, just a really solid book. I don't know, I feel like it's really hard to explain books that just like hit, right? I was not expecting it to be set in a very deserty setting, but most of the book is set in like true desert, which is interesting because that's not what the cover gives, but it was still fun. That doesn't really affect anything at all. I just thought that was interesting because that's not the vibe that the cover gives. Highly recommend. This one is a great example of what I love about T. Kingfisher's writing. Definitely not to the level of darkness that Sorceress Comes to Call is. That one is way more gruesome and dark and just written in a dark way. Like, stuff is happening in this book, but that one is like written intentionally to like, that's a big point of it, is just the darkness and it just has a different tone completely. And I don't know which one I liked better, to be honest. I really liked Sorceress Comes to Call, but I also thoroughly enjoyed this one. So I don't know which one is my favorite, but it was so good. So if you're into T. Kingfisher's fairy tale retellings, I would highly recommend this one. I also think that this one could be a really good place to start. I feel like this one could be a solid entry into T. Kingfisher's books. If you've never read one before, this one could be a really great place to start. But with that being said, I am now on to my last book, A Study in Drowning. This one's like heavy. It doesn't look much bigger than the other ones, but it feels heavier. So I'm gonna go and get started on this, and I will probably update you partway through when I feel like I actually have a better understanding of what the plot is on this book. Because as of right now, I feel like I've only given you guys really horrible descriptions of the book. So once I'm far enough in to actually know what the plot is and what's going on with it, I will give you guys an update. Hey everybody, quick update on this book. I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through it, so I thought I'd actually update in the middle of a book for once this video. So far it's going okay. This book definitely leans much more romantic-y than fantasy, which is not my favorite genre in the world, so that's been a little bit of a downside for me. I feel like the first little bit was very interesting. Great setup. I don't think I explained it super well at the beginning of this video, but this book is following 2 students your main character is named Effie, which first of all, that's throwing me off. I feel like that name has been claimed by Hunger Games and it just feels weird to use it anywhere else, but her name is Effie. How their school university system works is that you take a test, and depending on how high you score, you get into different colleges. And so she's taken the test, and her dream has been to study literature her whole life. She's very obsessed with this one specific author. And she takes the test, and she tests high enough to get into the literature school, which is like the most esteemed school in this country. And they tell her she cannot be in the literature school because she's a woman. And so she ends up in architecture school, even though she doesn't want to be there. And so when her favorite author dies, he has this competition for somebody to redesign the estate that he used to live in. And so she enters this competition and she ends up winning. So she goes out to this estate to help redesign it. Happens to run into a literature student there who she immediately doesn't like because he is in the literature program and he's actually from the country that they are warring with right now. And it's been like, it's this ongoing thing where they're always kind of at war with each other, and so nobody really likes the other country, and so she immediately doesn't like him, and that pretty much ends like 2 pages later. Like they get over, I feel like everybody has pitched this book to me as like academics rivals to lovers. They're like rivals, they dislike each other for like 2 seconds and then they get over it so fast, which is one complaint I have about this book. We did not really get to see them antagonizing each other very much. They pretty quickly moved on to being quite civil and then very rapidly move on to the romance. And at that point, we've lost the plot. It's gone, pretty much. Like, it's happening. We are slowly building. We got all the pieces into place for something that could be very interesting. And then we just got completely sidetracked by the romance. Which is why I don't typically love romantasy. I am definitely much more of a plot reader. And so when romantasies tend to just focus primarily on the romance and not so much the plot, it's not my favorite. I feel like there's kind of this romantasy template that a lot of people are using where you get a really interesting premise set up for the first like 50 pages. And then we get sidetracked by the romance and we spend most of the book doing that with very little, if any, progression in the plot, and then all of a sudden we cram the rest of the plot into like the last 50 pages of the book, and I don't like it. And so I'm a little nervous if that's what this is gonna be. Like, we're still getting tidbits about the plot, but not much. But that is still not my biggest gripe with this book. My biggest gripe with this book is, where is the magic? It's pitched as a fantasy book. I don't, like, there's folklore, and like they talk often about, well, pretty often about like the folklore of the country, but everybody's like, yeah, that's not real. And so nobody believes in the magic. We have seen absolutely no signs that the magic's real at all. And the main magic in this book, I guess, is in that her favorite author has written a fantasy book. And so there's like this fairy king that's a character in his book. And there's this whole thing that was set up at the beginning where she like sees things, but nobody believes her, and I can't tell if I believe her. She takes pills. Basically, she's been treated almost like she's schizophrenia, is kind of what it feels like. The doctors have given her these pills to make her stop seeing the not real things, and that's kind of all the magic we've gotten. Like, this is supposed to be a fantasy book? Where's the magic? So, I don't know. I have not a ton left of this book. You can't see where my bookmark is. I'm on page 304. Which is chapter 15, which, side note, if you don't like really long chapters, this is pretty long chapters, so if that's like a make or break thing for you, you may not love this one. Where is the last bit of the book? Wow, there's a huge snippet from the next book in there. There's 376 pages, so I have like 70 pages left of this book. Where's the plot? Where's the magic? It's fine. I was enjoying myself for the first, maybe even like 100 pages, but it's gotten really sidetracked and I'm really starting to get bored. I'm like, get me, like, let's start to have these pieces fall together a little bit. And I'm just not sure where this is a series, if we're gonna get any of that in this book. So these last 70 pages are gonna have to be real strong for me to feel the desire to continue the series. Unfortunately, I am at that point. I will say this probably is suffering slightly because I just read 2 5-star books back to back, but that's where I'm standing with this. We also just finished a steamy scene. It's not like overly explicit. This is probably still YA, but like, it took half a book for them to go from being rivals to a Stevie scene. Like, why is that the trope that everyone's marketing this with? I don't understand. They did not dislike each other for very long at all. So, I don't know, it started out good. It's now gotten on my nerves. So I'm gonna finish the book. I will let you know my thoughts. Yeah, I will update you later. The sun has officially gone down, and so we're using the overhead lighting and it looks a little crazy, but I wanted to come on and end this video off because I have finished A Study in Drowning. I think I'm gonna give this one like 3.5 stars. The setup was great. The middle was slow, the ending was fine. Most of what I said in my last update stands pretty true still. I don't feel like a lot changed. There was a small amount of magic in the very end of the book, but it was seriously so tiny. This is definitely much more romantasy, heavy on the romance, light on the fantasy, so it's not my cup of tea. I definitely like when they're like heavier on the fantasy side. Romance is fine as like a subplot, but I don't like it when it's necessarily the full point of the book, because I feel like you just lose so much of the plot. But overall it was fine. I don't necessarily, like, I wouldn't tell you not to read this book, but I definitely would go in with tempered expectations. I do also feel like this may have suffered slightly coming off of 2 5-star books for my favorite authors, so there is that. Had I read it at a different time, it's possible I would have liked it more, but I think no matter what, I would have had the same complaints about the lack of fantasy and the really distracted plot. I also feel no need to read another book. I feel like it wrapped itself up quite well. I actually feel like this had a neater, tidier ending than a lot of standalone books that I've read. So I feel absolutely zero need for another book. It very much so like hits all the points of making sure we wrap up every single little ongoing plot point, except for like maybe one, but I feel fine just like knowing that at some point it moved forward. No need for a second book. I did read, like skim read the little excerpt, or at least a few pages of it, and I was just like, I don't feel any desire to read that book. So I will be ending here. I don't plan on continuing it. I don't necessarily recommend this book, but I think if you're interested in it, go for it, kind of a thing. So not my cup of tea, but I do see how some people could like it if you're more into romance and you want something with just a sprinkling of fantasy in it. So with that being said, that is the last book that I had on my list for this video. So we're gonna go ahead and end it here. Overall, very successful video. I got 3 books off of my physical TBR, 2 of which were 5-star reads. So very, very successful. Ended on a little bit of a downer, but it's fine because we still had a very good video. So anyways, I still have so many books to read on my physical TBR. I think I'm sitting at 99, 98, something like that at the moment. So definitely need to continue to work on my physical TBR as we get through the end of the year. Luckily, a lot of the books that I've purchased recently I've bought intentionally because I want to read them before the end of the year. So I've bought a ton for my fall TBR that I want to read as we get into spooky season and things like that. And then I have a few that I've bought specifically for Around the World in Books videos. So I will definitely be making a dent in my physical TBR with some of my next videos, even if they're not physical TBR books or videos specifically. But definitely could potentially do some more physical TBR books in the end of the year and into next year. So if you have any good ideas of book videos I could do with my physical TBR, let me know. I've been thinking about doing things about like maybe putting up a spinning wheel, maybe doing like the TBR jar and then just reading those instead of like making a monthly TBR like lots of people do. So I don't know. Some thoughts, could do some fun things with that. Definitely I have so many books that I want to read that I'm so excited about on my shelves that I need to get to them soon. So we'll be trying to kind of keep myself slow on the buying books and hopefully I can get down how many I own that I haven't read. So anyways, with that being said, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.